Hello everybody, my name is Sniping is Fun. I welcome you back to a video on my channel that I've actually wanted to talk about and actually do ever since the announcement came out months ago about this. I wanted to give my thoughts, give my memories, give my, retrospective on the entire company, my history and memories of going to the stores and whatnot, and just kind of give my thoughts on it, before at least my store fully closes, which it seems like the stores differentiate between where they're from and whatnot, and mine does in about 2 weeks or so now. And it's about, Toys R Us filing for bankruptcy, and, all Toys R Us stores are basically closing down now. And basically, I just want to give my opinions on it. I just want to give my thoughts, my memories, and just kind of like have a final say on my channel, because of how much this, the store, Toys R Us, is impacted on people like, me, throughout our lives and whatnot. Everyone I'm watching right now probably would agree with me on that. Like, it was a very impactful store since it was founded many, many years ago, on being like this big store for toys and, for kids and various things of that nature. And then, later on, they add, the video games and the technology and various different like toys, things, for boys and girls, younger kids, older kids, and whatnot. Toys R Us has been around for so long. Most people, in my generation at least, grew up with the idea of this big mega toy store, this big mega store like that. And I wanted to give my farewell thoughts here, in video format, because it's like, first and foremost because of my memories with the store, all the different things I remember, but also because, the store I mainly go to is still technically open right now. They're still doing their big, closeout sale. Everything must go, and right now it's about 75% off. And in about 2 weeks, the store I mainly have went to for the last like 18 years, 19 years, like in that range, that one's going to be closing down right down the street from my house right now. And I wanted to put this video out mostly to commemorate my store, but also, Toys R Us in general. And there are numerous stores around the world that have already closed down. There's probably a few that might close down after mine. I don't know exactly for sure if it's like the end of June is when mine's supposed to be closing down, and I don't know if that's the end of day for all stores or if it's just for mine. There's maybe a few that last after that, but pretty much the majority of stores around the world by now probably have closed down. And I just wanted to kind of give my thoughts, like, seeing like this, like something you probably never would have expected. Like, just imagine jumping back in time about like 5 years, maybe even 10 years. Would you have thought that Toys R Us, this big mega toy store, it's like the store for kids, basically, was ever going to close down? Like, I remember hearing, like, since the filing for bankruptcy happened, basically different like sales reports and stuff I've seen mentioned online and whatnot about how their sales records have kind of been dropping over the years. And various reasons they've said, and other people have come up with why it's probably the reason, it's happened and whatnot. But it's like, you jump back in time and you say that to like your younger self, or you jump back like 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Sorry. And you say that, like, people will probably look at you funny because it's always been around. It's been around for quite a long time, and for it just to go out of business is kind of shocking. But not really all that shocking, because there's numerous businesses over the years that have closed down and went out of business and whatnot. Like Kmart's and stuff like that. There's various different stores, various different companies, various different like things around the world that, nothing lasts forever. You can't really, think about like nothing lasts forever. People, businesses, projects, companies and whatnot, nothing lasts forever. Some things have to end at some point. Nothing will be around forever. You have to realize that, in the real world. But it's kind of shocking to me, mostly because you never would have expected it. And I never would have expected it way back when. Like, the memories I have of Toys R Us and whatnot is actually, I want to kind of mention a few that I kind of remember right now. And the reason I'm wearing my Nintendo 64 shirt is not just because I picked a random shirt out of my closet. I actually specifically looked for this one in particular because most of my earliest memories of, Toys R Us, at least from when we moved to the new house, the house we live in now, we've lived here since like 1999. I've been in the same house for about 20 years. But since we moved out here, I remember the store here, but I do remember Toys R Us, going over to like friends' houses, cousins' houses, and Toys R Us by their, their places too, by their houses too. And I do remember before we moved here, like going to Toys R Us. It's not just like I came to Toys R Us, started going to Toys R Us when I was like 9, when we moved out here. But this Toys R Us right down the street is the Toys R Us I have the most fond memories of. And around the time I remember earliest memories, this is around like maybe 1999 to like 2003-ish, early on in terms of, but more so 1999, 2000, 2001 range. The system that was out at the time for Nintendo was the Nintendo 64. My earliest memories, mostly in my head from Toys R Us, is of the Nintendo 64, the Game Boy Color and whatnot. One of my biggest, fondest memories, I remember of, the Toys R Us down the street, and we first moved out here, and I was like 4th grade at the time. I think it was the summer. It was either the summer leading up to me going into the 4th grade when we first moved out. No, that would have been too early. I'm trying to remember now. No, it was the summer before I went to the 5th grade, I think. It was certainly after 4th grade. This was like 1999, 2000. The Pokemon anime was getting really huge. Pokemon in general was getting really huge. Before we moved out here, I remember growing up with the original Game Boy. I had Pokemon Blue for Christmas, like 98-ish. And the anime was starting to come out, and there was the card game. There was actually a card game league for Pokemon at the Toys R Us. I went there. There was like some of my neighbor kids that I was friends with around here. I went with him, his brother, I think some other kids around this area. There's other people I think I knew there, but it was mostly him and his brother. We used to do like a Pokemon League. You guys probably were around that time growing up with Pokemon. You probably were in other various different Pokemon Leagues, or since then, because, there's different like card leagues, like that since different generations have come out. But at that time, I remember I was distinctly getting into the card, Pokemon in general. It was a big Pokemon craze of like the late 90s and early 2000s. And I remember being part of this Pokemon League and actually knowing how to freaking play the card game. I can't remember for the life of me how to actually play Pokemon, the card game now. And that's also, given the fact that they also changed the rules, freaking crap ton, all these different generations later. I probably couldn't even learn that. But at the time, it was just 150, 151 Kanto Pokemon in the start of Johto, when Johto was first starting to come out, when I was really getting into the card game. And I remember doing the Pokemon League at Toys R Us. And I remember playing the games. I met some kids there. I probably became friends with some of them. And like I said, some of the neighbor kids around here, I think, were at that. It was like every Saturday morning. I don't know if any of you have ever been in the same type of situation. It was always like every week, I think it was Saturday morning. And it was basically like you go in there, you battle kids, you have to earn points and whatnot, do trades and stuff like that. And you earn the gym leader badges at the time, all the Kanto, Generation 1 gym leader badges. I don't know where all of them are at, but I think before I set up this video, give me 1 second, I actually did find one, just recall. Be right back. Just forgot to bring it out with me, actually. Yes. These right here, Wizards, the Pokemon Trading Card Game League. I think that's the Marsh badge. I'm trying to remember which badge that is from Generation 1. That, I don't know where the other ones are. I actually, won enough, battles, won enough games, and actually traded enough to get all 8 gym leader badges from Kanto. I don't know for the life of me where they're at now. I really don't. I never threw them away, so they're all buried in probably old boxes in like the closet or something. Like they're somewhere, and I just randomly came across this because I wanted to do this video, like I said, for a while since I wanted to get my thoughts on Toys R Us, and I came across this. I think looking through my room because I was cleaning some stuff up, and I'm like, okay, that's probably something useful to actually talk about. But yeah, there was these little badges that you won for you basically earned after you reached a certain number of trades, certain number of winning of the games and whatnot. And I remember doing that, and that was like the only time I really got into the Pokemon. I remember I loved collecting the trading card game, the Pokemon trading cards. I probably would do a video on that at some point because I still have those buried somewhere. A lot of my old stuff from back then, if I didn't get rid of it, it's buried deep in like the closet somewhere, or buried deep in a box somewhere in my room or a container, somewhere, maybe not in my room, maybe somewhere else. I have no clue, but I do recall I still have all my old Pokemon cards from back then, and I think I collected all, if not most, of Generation 1's Pokemon at that time. I was super into collecting the games. Remember, you guys have to remember this, for those of you, especially you younger kids out there that never actually grew up in the late 90s and early 2000s Pokemon craze. It was huge. It was really, really big. And I was into the anime, I was into the video games, I was into the card games, I was into collecting all the different little toys, and every little thing. I had Pokemon, like posters, t-shirts, backpacks, probably folders for school, various different little things. It was huge at the time. And I was super into like blue and red and getting yellow, and then gold and silver came around, Generation 2. And there's Pokemon Snap, and I got myself into Nintendo 64 with Pokemon Snap, and there's the stadium games and whatnot, Hey You Pikachu, all those fond memories back then of, the N64, and Game Boy Color and whatnot. That's the reason why I'm wearing the shirt, say that. But yeah, it's like this Pokemon League, I actually got all the badges. I only was able to find the Marsh badge, so there's that. But I have fond memories of that, but I'm going to show, I think I have, I don't have every single individual different little collections of the Pokemon card games, but I have at least all 150, 151, at least in some variation, because they released two different versions, Lieutenant Surge's Raichu, and all these different variations on that. I don't probably have every single one, but I think I have at least one variation of every single Pokemon from Generation 1. As soon as Generation 2 came around, though, I was starting to collect the Pokemon from that. And I do recall, I think that was in the Card Games League. It was over with, but I was still collecting a little bit. And, Toys R Us was still, I think, big in terms of that. But I kind of fell out of the card game during Generation 2. I was still loving the video games. I still love the video games to this day. I mentioned this in an old video before. I had, from Generations 1 to early Generation 4, I was super huge into Pokemon, especially Generations 1 through 3. Generation 4 was kind of like my falling out point for a little bit, and then Generation 5 and 6 kind of rose me back up a little bit for Generation 7. It was kind of like rising again after that. But back then, I really was super into the games, and then still into the anime. I kind of fell out of the anime later on as well, around Johto Hoenn, later on Johto Hoenn. But when Johto first came out, the card games, I was I kind of didn't want to start collecting anymore. I already collected enough, I think, with Generation 1, but I still was into the video game, still into the anime and whatnot. So that was one of my biggest, earliest memories, was the Pokemon League. Pokemon in general back then was actually just really huge. And I remember doing the Pokemon League and buying probably some toys from there and games and from there and whatnot. And in terms of game, let me jump on to my next topic. For those of you old enough to actually remember this, you couldn't just go in there and see games behind cases. For those of you who actually are old enough like me to actually remember, there used to be little paper slips of game boxes down the aisles, and you took the slip to the the cash register, and they'd go in the back and pull out the game. It wasn't just oh, I want this game pulled out from the case behind the wall and whatnot. It would, most game stores and in stores that sell video games nowadays anyways do. They had the slips that you basically get. They show the prices, and then they knew the game and to look for it, and they jumped into the back storage room and pulled out the stuff. That was a memory of that. And also, quite frankly, around the time before the remodeling, because the way Toys R Us is now, they remodeled it around in my store around 2003, 2004. But back then, around the Pokemon craze N64 early GameCube days, they had the old layout, which was around the time I said with the paper slips. That was around the time Majora's Mask was coming out too. And I remember them having game stations there too, especially when I was doing the Pokemon League stuff. I always would kind of get, later on, when I was starting to fall out of the Pokemon Trading Card League, I think, went back again. I did the first time they did it, and I think I dropped it afterwards. I kind of started seeing all these different, they had the game, console things set up so you could play them. I remember the Dreamcast, the Neo, what's the thing called? What was Sega's little handheld at the time? A pocket thing? the Neo Geo Pocket, or no, it's not Neo Geo, it's something else. Oh, I'm sorry. There was like all these different game systems they were showing off at the time, because around the time I was really into going to Toys R Us, Dreamcast was starting to come out. All these different little handout pockets. Majora's Mask, I remember seeing that. I was just getting into Zelda at the time. I didn't get into Zelda with Link to the Past and whatnot on Super Nintendo. I didn't get into Link to the Past until later on. My first memory of Zelda was Ocarina of Time, like a lot of people. I was playing it with my friends, copy over and over again. I borrowed it a little bit. My mom eventually bought me my own copy, and then when we were doing the Pokemon League thing, this was probably 2000 something, and probably around the time Orange Islands were out with Pokemon as well. And I seen them have like demo stations set up for those who probably remember, of Majora's Mask on the N64. They had like the dungeon set up, the boss battle, the first boss battle, and I think one of the dungeons or the field or something. And I was just standing back there astonished, just seeing this in front of me, because I was still new and fresh to the Zelda franchise. And and I wanted to play demo so bad, but I didn't people were playing it. I didn't want to speak up. I guess like my mom or someone had to help me. Oh, can you please play your game? Something like that. And I was just like, I think that was the first time I actually pre-ordered a video game too. I think was Toys R Us back in the day with Majora's Mask. I don't recall for sure, but it's like that was like the first time I ever pre-ordered a video game, which was Majora's Mask, and I just loved that game. Majora's Mask is an awesome game, and I have memories back then of that game coming out and seeing all these different stations for Dreamcast and like the Sega handhelds or Neo Geo handhelds or whatever, and like the Game Boy Color being at the time, N64, the GameCube and PS2 were on their way out. PlayStation 1 was still really huge at the time. It's just, my fondest memories are from like 1999 to about 2001/2002, before Toys R Us really changed its layout. And then after that, I still remember when they changed it to how the store looks now, when they put the games behind the cases and whatnot, and especially hanging out there usually on the weekends with my cousins who would always come over and visit or spend the night. We would go there, we'd buy those little chocolate balls, and sometimes I'd get a game or something or a toy, and they'd be over, we'd be playing video games and playing outside and whatnot. It's just like, yeah, that was a long. That was probably around 30, when I was 13, 14. I don't know. The family would always be over. The cousins and all that would be always going down there and hanging out and whatnot. It's just a lot of fond memories of Toys R Us, over the years, before my store had the layout switched and all the construction work, and then the current day version. Even recently, every now and then my cousin would come over and visit, and we'd go there, and my younger cousins now still would be there buying toys and whatnot. It feels so weird that it's going to close down. And lately I've been with these like liquidation sales, and I'm selling all these games, and I've been getting a few video games lately there on sale, like super on sale, like Shantae, Pirate's Curse, The Evil Within, Resident Evil Revelations 2, Fire Emblem Warriors, various PS3, 3DS, Switch games and whatnot. Like, it's all fine and dandy, but I keep going. Every time I've been going in there since, they've announced that they're, going out of business, it's actually kind of hit me a little bit more each time, because it's like the clock is ticking, and they're going to be out of business really soon. I won't be able to go in there and actually walk around in there anymore, looking around with my cousins and whatnot, and just seeing like what is a Toys R Us, like a specific, store about for toys and video games and whatnot. Like it is like like back in the day when I was younger, enjoying it for the Pokemon trading card game when the N64 was out with my cousins and us visiting there on the weekend, and when they were over spending the night and everything. It's like more and more I go in there for these liquidation sales just to see if I can buy any more video games. And it's hitting me more each and every time I go in there, and in a week or so it's going to be done for good. So I'm going to have to, whatever I can buy in the time, buy it, and whatever little time I can see that store, I guess, enjoy it, because it's like it's going to be gone really, really soon. And it's going to be weird in the future when I eventually have my own kids, and they're not going to have a Toys R Us. They're not going to have something that's centrally toys. I mean, you can still go to Target and Walmart and all these different places, and they sell toys and video games and whatever the heck else, but it's like, that's part of the store. That's not like the whole store dedicated to that thing. And it's gonna feel weird in the future when that's not around. When that was what I grew up with, that was a store I grew up with, and now I could probably relate to my mom and whatnot, and older members of my family, because there's different stores and businesses that went out of, they probably grew up with and then went out of business by the time they reached young adulthood and whatnot, and I never got to experience because they were gone. So the business were out were out of business and whatnot. So I guess that's really about it. But yeah, that's it for this video. Wanted to give my quick thoughts. It's about 20 minutes now, but yeah, that's my thoughts. Thank you, Toys R Us, for all the memories, all the times I spent there with my family, with friends, going up there, walking up there, buying games, buying toys, the Pokemon League, pre-ordering Majora's Mask, experiencing when they used to still have the sleeve thing, like all the different games I got to experience at the time, witnessing the, when the GameCube came out, the PS2 came out, the Dreamcast came out, when the N64 and PlayStation 1 were still reigning tall. Thank you for all the memories I have, and it was a blast. And I wish you the best of luck in the future. See you all next video.